Governor Bobber. I like good day, doctors.
George Allen here. Good day, doctors.
Good evening, everyone. It is June 4th, 2021. 2021 is half over. Joe Biden has done a lot of damage in a short time. Kind of hard to believe, but today is a couple of big days today. Today is the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, where the Chi-Coms butchered the pro-democracy movement in Tiananmen Square, where they had peaceful demonstrators. And I think everybody in the lefty media has forgotten all about Tiananmen Square, but we haven't. You know, we believe in free Hong Kong, and we are joined. We've got some doctors that are having some technical problems. We'll bring them in when they get here, but the faithful doctors are here. Dr. Tomlinson, welcome from the reddest part of Maryland, Carroll County. How you doing?
Good. I think I actually looked at it before. Garrett County actually has we've got 2-1 Republicans and Democrats, but Garrett County's got Carroll beat by just a little bit better odds.
Oh, really? Okay. I did not know that. And are you going to be at the Maryland Republican Party convention next Friday night, where the doctors are going to be doing a live? We've got some stickers and some swag to give away to our fans. You know, it will be our first live, appearance, so to speak, of the doctors next Friday. And are you going to Governor Ehrlich's reception at 7:30? He's got a great new book out. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Awesome. I will be there. Everything, Friday, Saturday.
And I understand there might be some karaoke too Friday night. So welcome, Dr. Irvine, Media Dean, Chairman of Access and Academia. How are you doing, Don?
Doing always good to be here.
And this week has been a busy week. Sleepy Joe Biden has been really busy messing things up. This week, the hackers hit the meat packer. The meat industry got hacked this week and targeted for ransomware. What's going to be next week is what I'd like to know. And,
well, that's a good question.
Crazy.
Yeah, and that's why we want Jeff on here to give us our cybersecurity.
Yeah, I know. He's got some technical problems. Let me text him while but
every time I try to throw one of these cybersecurity questions in, he's not on the show.
Yeah, he'll join us.
Yeah, I'm hoping that he will join us. We might want to just save that until hopefully that he'll join us. I do want to go back to what you were saying at the beginning of the show, though, or at the very top here, in terms of the anniversary of Tiananmen Square, because it's been 32 years, and as a result of this, I think this is part of the problem, is that this event is washed out from the memory of a lot of people. I mean, it is people that are kind of in our age range, definitely my age range, to a certain extent your age range, Dwight, that remember it. But
this was actually 2 days before our high school graduation, actually, over at Constitution Hall, which is we had our high school graduation, and it was basically that was 2 days after Tiananmen Square. It was like the talk of the graduation, so to speak.
Does that mean you're going to be 50 this year, roughly?
No, I actually graduated a year early, so I'll be 50 next
So we got to wait another year?
Yes, I'll be 49, which is not bad. Yeah. At least, I'll be able to say things like, many moons, and stuff like that.
Maybe also you've hit the half-century mark. But one of the stories that popped up today about this, because this, I think, as every year passes, at least on our media, we're seeing less and less reported on this particular anniversary. But there are reports that came out that on the Bing search engine, if you tried to search for the term Tank Man, it was gone. It's one thing to happen in China because we know the censorship in China. This is something they don't want any of their people to know about. This doesn't exist in their history. But for being a Microsoft said it was due to some human error. But you begin to wonder in this day and age, is like, come on. I mean, it's like this event occurred 32 years ago. You had somebody had to wipe this out. It had been there for a while. I mean, I think this, to me, I see this as more of a deliberate effort to kind of cooperate. I mean, Bill Gates likes the Chi-Coms, right, Dwight?
Yeah, he does. So does the Apple guys, and I'm just sending Breacher our link. He's having link issues here. I don't know what happened today, but yeah, But Breacher will be breaching in from Earth 21 real soon. So,
we'll bring them up to speed.
Yeah. So
I brought this up before, I think, when we were talking about China, and this is, I think, appropriate time to kind of mention it again. With China, I feel like it's a totally different scenario versus like, for instance, I'll use, I don't know, fill in the blank South American, Central American nation, wherever you had this kind of regime that ran the government, there was always this there was always the rebels, there was always this group of people who were ready to, if the opportunity came, they could they could step in and seize control if, for instance, someone like America was there to help. But I feel like with China, and I think that this particular historical moment from back in was it 88 or 89 was I feel like that moment probably crushed, and tell me if I'm wrong here, crushed any hope or any possible resistance that could ever be growing in China. I mean, do you think there's even something like that exists in China, like a kind of under the radar dark organization resistance?
We talked about this last year back when we were in the studio. We were talking about Free Hong Kong. Is that back, if you remember the democracy movements in Eastern Europe, you had Lech Walesa, you had Breacher just breached in. Hello, Breacher. How you doing? Can you hear us, Breacher? And Dr. Jeff is here. Welcome.
There we go. Hail, the gang's all here.
Yeah, hey, Breacher. So how are things at Earth 21?
How things what?
On Earth 21, did you guys have a Tiananmen Square there too? A massacre where the Chi-Coms butchered a bunch of freedom-loving folks who just wanted to be free? We're talking about Tiananmen Square. I'm just bringing you guys up. We're talking about Tiananmen Square. And as Chris mentioned, as I was saying, like when we were talking about Free Hong Kong, there are no Lech Walesas or Václav Havels in China that were the face of the pro-democracy movements. You don't have the organizations. And part of the reason is I think Tiananmen Square, they kind of wiped out every last one of and now people are kind of too afraid to even get involved, so to speak. It's that's one of the problems I think with China, and it doesn't help that his fraudulency is basically a puppet for Xi Jinping. I believe that's how you pronounce his name.
Yeah, I mean, to Chris's point, I mean, there may be something to what you said in terms of what it does, what Tiananmen Square did to anyone trying to create any kind of protest or uprising against the government. I mean, I think for no doubt that episode surprised the Chinese government. They weren't expecting this to happen, and the worldwide attention it got, obviously a huge black eye for them. But being a communist government, they quickly tried to quash that. But what they couldn't quash, because Dwight just mentioned kind of the Free Hong Kong, is that once China took over Hong Kong, that had been going along okay, right? I mean, they had China to basically kind of let Hong Kong be Hong Kong, and because when it came to business, kind of capitalism, Hong Kong was a thriving center. But when that movement, rose up, as a result of that crackdown, this very harsh law that they were trying to impose, then things they had a real problem, and they didn't control that. I mean, I think COVID, wound them a great deal because it make it dangerous to have crowds out there, and then they went full bore, put that in there, implemented the law. And now what are they doing? Virtually everybody that they could identify involved with that whole Free Hong Kong movement has been jailed and arrested, right? I mean, they're you can't anymore. I mean, we get some reports about these people being arrested and being prosecuted and whatnot. But China has shown the heavy hand here. Like, you uprise against us, we will find a way to crush you. Yep. And I don't know that Hong Kong, is going to, the people in Hong Kong will be able to ever do anything quite like they did before either with that.
Congress for years also gutted the CIA and our intelligence operation. If it were the old days of the Dulles brothers running the CIA, we would have been handing out guns. I mean, not just in China, we would have been handing out guns during the Green Revolution of Iran, bringing down governments, that we don't like, or basically that are anti-American around the world. I think I want to say, Tiananmen Square also reminds me about the Prague Spring, where you had the pro-democracy forces rising up in Czechoslovakia, where you had, which kind of bore the rise of Václav Havel, but we did nothing. We stood silent while the Czechs were being butchered by the government, by the communists there. We did nothing in Tiananmen Square. We didn't even, I mean, we did a slap on the wrist sanctions against the Chi-Coms that were really nothing. And then you had Bill Clinton a couple years later gave them better missile technology with ITT selling off, so now they can target us better with their missiles, and that was all because of under Bill Clinton's presidency.
Well, and our government has turned pretty much a blind eye to IP theft, right?
Yes. Bonnie Glick had a great article in, I believe it was Newsweek, but you can see it on the Montgomery County Republican Club website about turning a blind eye to intellectual property, And I think that's part of the problem is, you've got too many American politicians. The Biden family is in bed with the government in Beijing, quite frankly. Poor Hunter wouldn't have a job if it weren't for the Chi-Coms.
That's well. There's still be a lot to written probably on Hunter Biden and the Chi-Coms.
Yeah. And
much to Joe's dismay.
We have an email where they met with Hunter and they met with Vice President Biden back then, So, but let's bring in Jeff and Breacher.
So we're just talking about China in general, or what are you talking about?
Tiananmen Square. Remember, that was 2 days before my high school graduation, if you recall back 1989. Boy, that seems such a long time ago.
That was, I think, as was said, the problem was more publicity problem than it was their policy. Obviously, China was not going to change their policy. I think it just was that because it had the publicity that it had, it really kind of gave them, like I said, the black eye in the public interest, which, again, China is, it's always been China's way or no way, and I think no one was surprised the way that Hong Kong went. I mean, I think they wanted it to kind of preserve their, at face that they were trying to keep Hong Kong the way they were, but they had such divergent philosophies that there was no way that Hong Kong could adopt to the Chinese way of life after experiencing kind of the Western, I wouldn't say democracy, but the Western style of freedoms.
And it also goes back to, I'll say it, I'm going to lay the problems all at Harry Truman's desk, when China invaded Tibet. Nobody said a word. Harry Truman basically looked the other way. You had Americans. I mean, you've got Americans today, because I remember you have a lot of Americans who will bring up the fact that they'll go, "Oh, Tibet was always part of China, so it's okay." They went in there and wiped out the Tibetan Buddhist monks, who were not a threat.
It was always claimed by China. Was it? That's different.
Yeah, it was always claimed by China, but even China's also
Real
claiming
Palestinian
there's,
thing.
islands that belong to Japan too in the North China Sea, in the Sea of Japan. They're claiming these are our islands when they're basically they belong to Japan, quite frankly. And I think China is really, I mean, they're making incursions. They're buzzing naval ships. They are making incursions in the South China Sea, the Philippines. China is building these fake islands and then claiming more and more international waters as Chinese territorial waters. And I hate to say, our State Department is falling asleep behind the wheel. Hillary Clinton's State Department did absolutely nothing to confront the Chi-Com aggression in South China Sea. They've done nothing at all. Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and even what has the Biden State Department? By the way, who is the Secretary of State these days? I keep forgetting who it is.
Anthony Blinken. Blinken.
Yeah, and he's basically falling asleep behind the wheel. Where is he? Why hasn't Joe Biden made a statement today about Tiananmen? I believe President Trump made a statement about Tiananmen Square on Tiananmen Square Day. He made, but I don't think Joe Biden's yet said anything. I think he's taking a nap or something like that. I don't know.
So Dwight, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and you were given a lot of, you know, other historical examples and stuff. And in the past, America, you know, would stand up and stop this from happening. But I mean, I can't imagine that we've ever been so in bed with a country. And what I mean by that is depending on them for labor, technology. I mean, do we even have the ability to break away at this point from China? I mean, would it even be possible? Or are we so deeply, you know, connected and dependent upon them?
Well, I think if President Trump were president, we'd be in a better position to break away from China. Under Joe Biden, you know, Joe Biden has cut off, you know, the XL pipeline. He basically gave the gift to Putin and the Russians about their pipeline, which is what the Russians have wanted, which basically give them a stranglehold on Western Europe by they can cut off the gas supply. He runs it through Ukraine. I mean, you know, the other night, Governor Gilmore and Ellen Sauerbrei were on our Direct Line show, and they both mentioned America's being tested. And if I had to give a report card for the first 6 months of the Biden presidency, I will say he's gotten an F everywhere. He is not. He's failed this country, more or less. He has basically everything from jobs. He basically killed a whole bunch of jobs day one of coming in, you know, by cutting the XL pipeline. Now he wants to ban Anwar, drilling in Anwar, which this is an issue near and dear to me because this is some stuff I did a lot of advocacy for Anwar back when President Bush was president. And the liberals, they don't seem to understand that, you know, Anwar basically drilling exploration is basically the footprint is if you took 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and the drill and you take a mark, and if you do this, let me demonstrate. This is Anwar. I mean, that's actually, and that can you guys see the dot that I just made on here?
A little bit. Yeah.
It's a little hard to see, so let me make a little circle around it. There's a little dot there. Okay. That is where they want to drill. You know, basically on Anwar, but Joe Biden doesn't want that, and it all comes back to he's soft on communism, he's soft on China, he's soft on everything. Frankly, he's soft on the Russians, and frankly, you know, and that's why it's harder for us to kind of disengage from China, but I think it can be done. I know they control.
And Dwight, I think, I mean, to your point, to Chris's point, I mean, the thing here is that President Trump did try to, you know, through the use of tariffs, in essence, right, see about, you know, breaking away there. That, you know, he saw that the dependence upon China for the U.S. was just too much. Now, one of the things that I think we learned from that was that yes, but it is something that will take.
Oh, yeah, somebody just got buzzed by
we
dot-com.
we saw manufacturing start to shift to other countries, but this was not going to be an overnight process because it'd take years for the other countries to build up the process to handle the production that was being done in China by a lot of the U.S. companies and things like that. But it was very interesting to me to see the movement of some of the factories and some of that production to other countries as a result of what President Trump was trying to do with the tariffs. Of course, Biden basically is like, well, no, we're going back to the way it was because he thinks it's all well and fine. But I think we know that that's not the way we want it. We don't want China holding a lot of our debt. We don't want China stealing all our intellectual property. It just why are we going to become beholden to China for all these things? Americans, I'd be willing to pay a little bit more money if it meant some of our products go elsewhere and move to a non-communist nation, or at least one that is not as much of a dictatorship as China is. Mm-hmm. But that also takes a little bit of while for people to get used to. All of our dealings in China is making us used to very cheap goods.
Yeah. So I was going to say that you follow up on your point. I was going to mention first of all about Tibet, and in kind of the spirit of the Tiananmen Square, all the Tibetan monks and the self-immolations they're doing in protest. China has a history of human rights violations, and I don't think anyone who really looks at them objectively can dispute that. The issue we have that's been mentioned is the fact that China. And we say that America is the last superpower. Well, yes, militarily, no one can hold a candle next to the U.S. But China, economically, is a superpower. And the problem is that we have relied upon them for so long, that to reclaim our independence economically from them, we would have to develop all the infrastructure, which we pretty much outsource. I mean, we went to China because, the cheap labor, cheap parts, cheap everything. The same reason we, have our cars manufactured in Canada and Mexico. It's cheaper there. But for whatever, good or bad, it is what it is, not at this point. So, but now we're beholden to the whole manufacturing cycle within China. We are at a semiconductor shortage right now, but that's in Taiwan and that's in other, Middle Eastern countries. We used to have, manufacturing chip fabs were, a U.S. thing until we offshored them. So, and as I've said before in previous sessions, China has a monopoly on rare earth materials. So need a bit, I can't say it right. All the rare earth, the magnets and such, China, owns the full chain of that. They you can't get a rare earth magnet without going to China. And the U.S. has the ability to do that, but not the stomach to really build up the infrastructure. And so we will forever, whether it's solar power, wind power, any kind of power that requires a generator of any kind, we still have to go to China to get the actual magnets for those things, or solar panels, produced in China. So even if we want to try to be like energy independent, we're still getting all the stuff manufactured in China. So, I tried to bash the president too much. I mean, you can say for good or ill, what policies you approve. The issue I have, the biggest issue I have with Biden is the fact that he is so, pro-climate that he's willing to throw out the baby with the bathwater when it comes to all of our fossil fuel policies. Yes, I mean, if we want to get off of them, that's fine. But you don't just say we're going to cut off all those projects and just cause us now, an artificial shortage where there wasn't before.
Yeah, and let's call it what they used to call it, global warming, frankly, because climate change is every day, frankly. It's all a myth. They keep trying to redefine it just to fit their narratives. I mean, we should be underwater by now if we listen to Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth. If you recall, by now we should all be living underwater because of all the polar caps are going to melt. And got news for you, the ice shelf has actually only gotten thicker in Antarctica. Since,
let's first of all, let's agree to disagree, and second of all, let's agree that fossil fuel is a finite resource. It's going to deplete at some point. So regardless of whether it causes climate change or not, we need to move off fossil fuels just for the fact that it's not going to last forever.
But my view is all the above options, Jeff. I feel like we should have all above. Do technology. Let's do batteries. Let's do lithium. Let's do nuclear. Let's do hydrogen. Let's do all the above. I don't want to cut off our arm because to basically say, oh, we're going to be working with one hand tied behind our back, is what would happen if the way the Biden and the squad and the Democrats get their Green New Deal will be basically one arm tied behind us and the other one they'll break. So try to do, like they want to ban fossil power, gas burning cars in California by 2030, I believe it is. Breacher, come on in. You've been a little quiet today.
Yeah, I have been a little bit quiet. It's probably a good thing, I guess.
Things okay on Earth 21?
What's that?
I said everything good on Earth 21?
Everything is perfect over here in the greatest county of Earth 21. I would say on the issue of China, I there's parts of me that, like, I was reading this past week about the I guess it's a Microsoft search engine, Bing, which was started in my old undergrad, way back in the day, and it was disturbing. Is like the kind of, you Google the or I guess you use Bing, which I don't know who does, for Tank Man for Tiananmen Square, it doesn't even appear on the images, and that was really disturbing to see how much of this censorship has permeated even our own kind of markets in terms of our access to information. I just remember a few years ago, it was, I think, on the 30-year anniversary of Tiananmen Square, The Onion had a headline that China commemorates Tiananmen Square with, I think it was 30 years of silence, like a moment of silence that's lasted 30 years, because they really did not mention anything about it. But what it does get me to thinking about a little bit more is about what I would call like the conundrum of populism. And I think it's not I laud the Trump administration for taking a tough stance on China, but in the process of trying to basically say we need to focus on America first and not focus on problems overseas, we kind of ceded a lot of ground to China. And I say that as somebody who used to work in Sub-Saharan Africa and somebody who used to work in Thailand, where you see the Chinese have really moved in, not so much even under Trump, but even before that under Obama and Bush, where the Chinese, you can go anywhere in Western or Eastern Africa, you can see Chinese everywhere. Chinese, they're getting awarded the contracts to build roads and a lot of the infrastructure there. They're indebting a lot of these African countries heavily in debt with these kind of loans where they don't push for anything on governance. They basically just give out loans with zero interest, and they can basically control the country in the future. And you see the same thing with like Myanmar. You see the same thing in a lot of these countries. It almost feels like, what's that?
You mean Burma, right?
Burma, yeah, I guess. It's actually a funny story. I used to work in Thailand for the UN, and so you could not say you could not say Burma with the UN. You had to say Myanmar. With the CDC, which we worked a lot in partnership with, you couldn't say Myanmar. You had to say Burma. Then Obama went to Myanmar, Burma, and he changed it to Myanmar.
Yeah, he went around renaming a lot of things and recognizing a lot of despots around the world.
Yeah, it was. So what I'm saying is that I think the idea of like populism in some ways, like, yes, you do want to focus on the U.S. You want to kind of focus a little bit more on the interior part of the U.S. And our foreign policy should be less kind of starting wars overseas, or less wars overseas. But I think it's the problem of that is you do have these countries like Russia and China that are trying to basically, as we try to move towards further away from having a deeper footprint around the world, these countries start gaining more ground, and is what probably is more concerning for me. So I don't really know what the answer is on that one. I just see it more and more, and it's hard to basically take a stance against China when we were allowing them to actually grow so much more powerful than they were before.
What is this? Is this part of the legacy of Richard Nixon, Dwight?
I hate to say it, when President Nixon did this, it was, I hate to say it, look, if we judge today by what was going on, okay, Richard Nixon's policy towards China was about driving a wedge between the Soviets, the evil empire, and the Chi-Coms. And he did do that, by opening up, China. Although if you look back today, I'd say we should have been dusting off General MacArthur's plan for the liberation of mainland China, frankly. Because, one thing Ambassador Gilmore mentioned, he goes, what would happen if the Russians invade the Ukraine, the North Koreans invade South Korea, and China decides to invade Taiwan? And I'm thinking, well, international affairs, I remember that's what the main plan was during the Korean War. And rightly or wrongly, basically rightly so, our president, and I think it probably was more his Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense's plan, moved the Seventh Fleet between Formosa and China, which would prevent the Chinese from invading Formosa. And we only had to deal with the Korean nonsense, frankly, from the Chinese-backed North Koreans that invaded South Korea. And basically, what Ambassador Gilmore was saying is we are really not ready for something like that to happen again. I think it would probably take Joe a couple of days just to come up with a response. I don't think he'd be dispatching the Seventh Fleet to protect our friends in Formosa anytime before more than 72 hours after the fact. By that time, the game's over because Formosa is not a large, a large island, and it's a home to the real China, the democratic free China. And that's one of the things that I think this administration, a lot of the challenges they have ahead of them, they need to kind of bring their A game, but they're bringing their F game, frankly. They really have. This guy decides to appoint people because of their gender, opposed to their qualifications. That is the problem with his fraudulency. Even Bill Clinton didn't just appoint people for the sake of appointing. I hate to say it. I mean, Janet Reno, she was a total kook and all that, but she was not a. Look how she dealt with illegal immigration, Chris. She sent in the ATF at gunpoint to take Elian Gonzalez, sent him back to communist Cuba. Wouldn't we like it if Joe? Why can't we do that with our current border crisis? But let's do an exit out of this, Don, because I know we got a lot of other issues.
We got some other things. I did want to ask the group about Dr. Anthony Fauci, because thanks to some Freedom of Information requests, treasure trove of emails that were released this week and reported on in various ways. And so I think for a lot of conservatives, if not most conservatives, shine that was still left on Dr. Fauci, and I'm being pretty I don't know, I'm not really being serious about that. Is off there, because some of those emails were kind of interesting, and what some of the conversations he had about masks, some of the discussion about the Wuhan lab leak theory and stuff like that. So Jeff, you guys, any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. I've not kept up with all that stuff. I don't know what to think about it. I mean, obviously, putting on a public face, saying one message and then having, your own thoughts individually, that's, I can give that a certain amount of leeway. I know that's a big divisive, subject in the first place, is because there are a lot of people who, give various different amounts of weight to, how effective wearing masks are, by the CDC guidance, and then even the Wuhan, how much of that was human engineered versus just a natural occurrence. So, yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a mess right now. It certainly, like I said, took the shine off. So I think I'm just glad that if anything had happened towards the end of this, where we're kind of at the exit. So I think time will tell. But at this point, it's certainly disappointing.
I think for me, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, what I do like is that it's the selling. I mean, obviously, it's a challenge to have anybody have their reputation kind of be sullied. But I think with this guy, it was a celebrity scientist. I mean, he was the new Bill Nye. I mean, he was basically this very smart guy who would come out in the morning news shows and he would talk about how dumb people were for wearing their masks and not getting vaccinated, all these other things. And clearly, they were just ignorant to understand the real science behind it. He's going to break it down to in very, very lofty words. And to see these behind-the-scenes images of the amount of uncertainty that he had himself, and the amount of uncertainty that his team had, I think it really resonated with a lot of folks. It reinforced that this guy didn't know everything. He was a celebrity scientist, and he was basically coming out on national TV trying to parade this image of that he knew everything. And the CDC knew everything, the NIH knew everything, and they really didn't know. And they were kind of making it up as they went along. They constantly moved the goalpost. And I think for a lot of us who are reading this, it's kind of like, well, yeah, of course we knew this. But for a lot of folks who are seeing this now, I think it's their shattered image of the celebrity scientist that, Bill Nye could actually be telling a lie here, or the new Bill Nye could be lying to us. I just think that for me, it's like, I am
there's
glad.
a new Bill Nye now?
What's that?
There's a new Bill Nye?
Well, I think Anthony Fauci was trying to be the new Nye. I think he was
That's
trying
true.
to be.
I like that comparison.
Come out here and out of nowhere, it's going to come out. This celebrity status will come out in like 5 news shows per week, and they tell us what's wrong with it, why we need to wear a mask when we sleep or whatever. Like, I just think it's absurd. But I'm glad that this stuff is coming out. I think honestly, I think transparency and sunlight will be the best disinfectant in this. And the more we learn more about this, and the more we learn more about what's happening behind the scenes, the more careful we should be about listening to these kind of, these inflated bureaucrats that are basically trying to tell us, how to shut down basically speaking on areas that they're not really trained to do.
Yeah, and yet if you listen or watch the media, it's as if they're still kind of praising him. They're talking about how courageous he is and all of these things. It's like they didn't read some of the all the emails, especially the ones that have been highlighted. They've completely ignored the ones that showed the contradictions in the things that he said publicly and privately. So for the media, he's still their hero, but I think his image has been whatever was left has been severely tarnished. Chris.
Oh yeah, for the follow up what you just said on so I get my CNN news alerts because they are hilarious, and they've only had one thing to say about Dr. Fauci since all these emails started coming out, and I'll read it. This is what the little news alert says. Thousands of emails show how Dr. Fauci found time to answer questions on COVID, even from strangers, and give a rare glimpse into his frantic schedule. So they completely just totally move on from anything that possibly could be, damning to his legacy and his reputation, and instead they totally have twisted it to actually, show you these emails actually reveal the opposite. They show you how dedicated this man was in the last year and a half. So absolutely hilarious when you look at what the liberal media tries to throw out there to the world.
It's amazing. Dwight?
Yeah, and Dr. Fauci, it's like I think the bloom is off, quite frankly. This guy, he's got a book coming out. It's like he's would it be safe to call him a war profiteer? He's profiting off the war on COVID. He's a war profiteer. He's got a book out there. Him and what's his name? Governor Baby Doc Cuomo. Both are war profiteers. I think it's safe to say. He's got an Emmy for his book about how to deal with Corona. I'll send all the old people to nursing homes so they can die there. I mean. By the way, the funniest thing is they fell short by 89 folks. So if Baby Doc Cuomo didn't force all the old people in nursing homes where they all died of COVID, they would not have lost the congressional seats. Just saying.
For which they're going to fight. They're going to fight that in court, I think.
Yeah, I know. It's like stop whining. Frankly, just stop whining. Why don't you change your business policies, your tax policies? Why don't you make your state a friendlier place to do business? Why don't you make your state friendlier for people to live in, where you don't have to have 2 jobs, one parent is working just to pay the taxes, the other parent is working to put food on the table. Why don't you actually cut some taxes? And I'm sure you'll get those 89 people back in another 10 years. You may get that congressional seat back. But no, they don't want to do that. They want to just tax anything that moves. I mean, Rush Limbaugh moved out of New York for the whole purpose of they wanted to tax him for doing business. I mean, I remember the city of Philadelphia years ago when they were having hard times. They wanted to tax baseball players for every time they played a game. When they played the Phillies in Philadelphia, they wanted to tax those players for the 1 day or 3 days they were there in Philadelphia. And that was idiotic. And basically, New York's policy is we're closed for business. We don't want families here. We're not very welcoming of people. We just want the uber rich who can live here. and we can tax them. Basically, the Upper East Side liberals, frankly, that's all they want. And again, Fauci and Cuomo were profiteers. I guess we can say that. Is that safe to say?
Yeah. I want to say hello to Maria, who's greeted us on Facebook, and then you got to run David Bond's
Yep,
comment.
I've done that. I like that.
That may be one of the best comments we've had on this show.
I know. We're going to be live. By the way, next Friday, we'll be in person. Come and get our autographs, if you want. We'll have our Sharpies. Chris, you'll be giving out autographs next week, right?
Yeah. I like that idea you just threw out there that Philadelphia, with the baseball. I think that we should do a twist on that in Baltimore. Brandon Scott should propose that we tax any baseball team that comes and beats the Orioles in our city. And I think just on that, the city might be able to pay off any problems they've got just by that tax.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of tax.
14-game losing streak they had.
Yeah. Exactly.
I know. It's Orioles magic, everyone. It's Orioles magic.
I almost put that down on the list today about Orioles magic and their 14-game losing streak that just came to an end.
And at least they're not 0-23.
Yeah, no, there've been worse times, but just as another baseball thing too, because we're in early June. The trading deadline will come up by the end of July, I guess. Question is how many of those Orioles that are on there that are playing well won't be there after the trading deadline. Can the Orioles? Will the Orioles, get rid of some people to get some more prospects and try to for the future?
I tell you, being an Orioles fan is a lot like I'm gonna mess the book up. I want to say The Great Gatsby. It was the best of times and it was the worst of times. That's the life of an Orioles fan. We were really happy the best of times early in the season when it looked like they were on a roll and they were gonna just run roughshod through the NL East, which is now I don't think they're and now it's like the worst. That
was a complete tease.
It was like we had the best of times, we're in the worst of times.
The problem for the Orioles, and I'm a Nationals fan, and Nationals are struggling as well. But it's just that with the Orioles, it's kind of really.
You
hard
mean the Expos that moved to Washington?
It's kind of hard to see where the light is at the end of the tunnel with the Orioles. It's they're so far away from really having a team that will really contend in that division. It's at least with the NL East that even the Nationals are doing lousy. They're still in the race, kind of. Though they won't be there at the end.
Yeah, here's the thing. It's been a long road, okay, for the Orioles from getting from here to there. It's been a long time, frankly, But you gotta have faith of heart. You gotta have faith of heart.
All right, enough of baseball before. Otherwise, we'll just continue going on here. Joe Biden, President Biden. We just come off this Memorial Day weekend. He gives a Memorial Day speech, and as he talks about things going on there, he talks about democracy being in peril, and he kind of took a pot shot. He kind of using voting rights, free and fair election kind of thing, which taking a pot shot at where they were trying to pass a voting rights law, and all the Democrats left the State House. They left the chamber, which put them below the quorum that they needed to go in the vote on. So Governor Abbott, I guess, is going to call a special session. The Republicans control. They have the majority in the House and the Senate in Texas, so they'll get this done one way or the other. But I don't know. I just thought, okay, a lot of people had complained about President Trump sometimes injecting politics into speeches or into places where he shouldn't have, where there were more serene type of events and things like that. And to me, Joe Biden has just done the same thing, and by also talking about democracy being in peril, he represents a Democrat Party that they don't really care that much about democracy, at least when it comes, they keep talking about voting. But they're not about voting, and they're really not about having free elections. They just want the elections to go their way.
Yeah, and here's Speaking of Texas, great state, and all the best to George P. Bush, who's running for Attorney General. We wish him all the best. And I think this might be setting up a stage for 2028.
Is it the little brown one?
What's that?
Is that the little brown one? Sorry, bad joke.
Yes, I do remember that joke too. I'm surprised you know about that line. But yes, he is. I'm thinking 2028 or 2032. Bush for America. Bush 3.0.
I'll have to get my Bush picture updated in the back there. Get his.
Oh yeah.
His face added.
By the way, and now, whoops, Don, you remember these? Yeah.
Actually,
Robert McDowell.
I mean, what is Bush is what? He's the commissioner or something down there right now or something.
He is the land commissioner right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So my keychain tag that I use when I go to the gym every day is a George P. Bush keychain tag I got at Texas Republican Convention. I don't know how many ever years ago when he first ran.
Yeah.
I
So
think it would be great for him to have like Prince Harry as maybe his running mate, and we could have two
Prince Harry.
Yeah, we could have two dynasties on the ballot. I think we basically.
I was thinking Dick Cheney could be. He's got the heart of a 25-year-old.
I think
Bush Cheney. We could reuse those bumper stickers again.
We could do that. We could have it's Cheney. I would hope that like. Anyways, that's a dynasty that going back to the injection of politics into a like. Look, I think the sacred moments of these like Memorial Day speeches. I mean, any politician can obviously seize the moment to try to inject their own little brand and try to repeat their moments, their talking points. But I think for me, it's more the fact that like the narrative. I mean, even when we talk about the Georgia, like it's almost at the tip of my tongue. I want to say the Georgia voter suppression law, which was nothing about that, right? And the same thing with the Texas voter suppression law. We want to say that because that's exactly what we're told to say. And when we actually look at the merits of actually both laws, it actually isn't that. But because it's said so frequently that like we're almost like told to believe that, and so I'm looking at the stuff of like all the censorship that happened with Trump, like anything that you mentioned stolen election, stop the steal, and like you're completely banned from social media. You're completely banned from saying any of that stuff because you're considered some wacko. But they're totally allowed to say the other side. The other side is allowed to say, "Oh yeah, let's voter suppression," when they know that for a fact that that's not the case, right? If you're moving to a mail-in system of mail-in, when you basically trying to like verify signatures because you want to verify who actually is mailing in their ballot actually did vote, it's not voter suppression. It's simply just trying to uphold the integrity of the ballot. But the fact that they can control that narrative and the fact that they have almost another political party, the media basically echoing that and censoring anybody who says the opposite, then it becomes very concerning, I think. And I don't know how we fight against this. I think it's something that I think I know when television was so far to the left, we dominated the radio and people like Rush Limbaugh, and they started creating a new avenues for stuff. I don't know how we do this now. I mean, maybe we have to like find some offshore websites that we could basically have new ways of reaching out to people in the masses, or maybe go back to radio, right? Maybe
I mean, Breacher, it's kind of what we're doing. We're kind of part of the solution. We are getting the word out. We are on social media. We're on YouTube. We're on multiple YouTube channels. Not YouTube channel, Facebook pages. We give the contrary opinion to YouTube or Facebook that shut us down, but we're here. We're kind of like the old voice of America. We're kind of on.
Speak for yourself, Dwight.
What? We're not like the old voice of America. We're not trying to get pro-democracy movements going around the world. We're not like that. We're like that. We're inspiring people. I mean, we're inspiring people to run for office. We're inspiring people to do all this stuff. And anybody can start a YouTube show, preferably not in our time slot, but anybody can do that. I mean, we did this. Dr. Politics, I think, has been around for about almost 5. Would you say about 3 years, Don? We've been doing this. I mean, 3-4 years regularly, I should say. And before we were kind of like the Barbara Walters special. Once a quarter, we do Matt Foldy and I would do the show, but and we would talk about the issues of the day. But then we started doing it monthly. Then went to weekly, and we're weekly now. And it's great. We have some of the best fans around, frankly. We're viewed in Arizona, Florida, North Carolina, California. I mean,
the greatest county on earth.
Texas, they love us in Texas, so we're doing well. We're building a nice, and David Bond says it best. We're cooler than Dr. Fauci.
I was going to say, to in response to Ray's, question about, how do we fight, the voter suppression rhetoric. The Democrats have good branding when it comes to that, and they've been saying that for many, 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 many years. And the Republicans don't really have a comeback to that. I mean, we argue the case, but we don't have like a voter assurance slogan, every vote counts or anything like that. That sounds like something you can get behind. So part of it is branding. Honestly, we just need to have people.
We want every legal vote to be counted.
But just have something that sounds like something you can get behind, and just say, what we want to say is, yes, every vote counts, meaning that every vote both counts in terms of, counting towards the election, but every vote, is counted and validated that it is actually a valid, vote. So again, you can spin it any way you want to, but the problem is, again, it's this branding. You just need to think of a way to, come up with slogans like that embodies a core concept that everyone can get behind. Like, yes, the voting matters, and that Republicans are not trying to diminish the ability to vote. We're trying to enhance the assurance we have that votes are valid. So that's, again, and it's tough because there are sometimes hidden agendas on both sides. So without going down that path, if you're trying to, again, fight against the rhetoric, then you just come up with a better brand that says, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to encourage, voting, but we want to make sure that every vote is properly handled.
Yeah, and one of the problems we had here too, and once again, it goes back to the pandemic. I mean, pandemic basically gave, voting laws, rules were
relaxed,
greatly relaxed. So you could really have things that people could do, ways they could vote this time around that were not part of the normal process. But the Democrats, they're trying to seize that, saying like, we want all of those basically to be permanent. We want those to be codified. We want 24, hours a day. We want drive-through voting. We want ballot boxes everywhere where they're not even monitored and all this kind of stuff. We want everybody to be mailed a mail-in ballot. We don't, and have little or no verification of where those absentee ballots, if that's really the person. Yeah. They've convinced, because of what Ray was talking about, Breacher was talking about in terms of the control of the media has deeply inculcated a lot of people, and I tend to say that those are going to be a lot of the, what Rush Limbaugh would have always called the low information voters. They're convinced that those are all their rights, that our country should have all voting, rules based on what happened in the pandemic. And ballot security, ballot integrity is really not on the table for them. Democrats don't talk about that. They don't talk about those words at all.
Now let's go back in time a little bit. Talk about election integrity. Let's go back in time to the 1980s, and there's a little island called Grenada. After President Reagan liberated, they would have a free and open elections. Do you think we would have let them do a mail-in vote for the first free elections in Grenada in, I think it was a couple of years? I don't think we would let any. I don't think Jimmy Carter would, be able to send observers and justify mail-in votings in a new democracy, whether it be, the Philippines when Cory Aquino ran against Ferdinand Marcos and Cory Aquino won. Imagine Marcos could have won that free and open election if he could have done a mail-in ballot. He could have just sat there and stuffed envelopes, all day long. We would not let a communist despot dictator say, "Oh, I'm having elections." Imagine if, you have what do you call the other Castro, Raul Castro, or Hugo Chavez when he was alive. "Oh, don't worry, America, we are having free and open election. Everybody can vote by mail." We would not stand for that, but we're letting that work here. Jimmy Carter would not let some third world despot get away with it. He would not let Augusto Pinochet do a mail-in ballot, frankly. But he's letting Joe Biden do it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing too, Dwight, is just that, European countries, a lot of countries around the world have, they require ID to vote, right? I mean, we talk about, the Republicans talk about voter ID and kind of things like this, and the liberals and everybody, they recoil in horror and they think this is some violation of our freedom. But they don't. No one's paying attention. They're not paying any attention to what's happening, across the pond, everything like this. From most of the countries,
they want us to be like Europeans. They want to be like Europeans. Well, they have free healthcare in Europe. Why can't we have? Well, they have ID laws in Europe. Why can't we have those? Why?
Right.
Why can't we have ID laws? Why can't we do what we did when we had the free and open elections in Iraq, where we had people when they went, they were not allowed to mail in. They all went, and they were, the folks in Iraq for the first elections in Iraq, they were dodging bombs from terrorists, snipers, and all sorts of bad people to go and vote. And they voted, they showed ID, they dipped their fingers in the ink. Then Congressman Bobby Jindal did a beautiful thing at the State of the Union, where he and all the Republicans, had their fingers covered in purple, so solidarity with the Iraqi voters. I bet if we wanted to even do that, let's say that's the lowest bar, having put their fingers in a bottle of ink that takes a day or two to wash off, so we know that they can't go back and vote again, right? I bet the Democrats would say there's something racist about that too. Maybe we're anti Barney the dinosaur if the ink is purple or something like that. I don't know. But that's my issue is why can't we? Why do we have to have early voting? And with that's I think it speaks for itself. But we're getting into final thoughts territory, and let's start with Dr. Tomlinson, because I believe he has to jump real soon.
I do. I have my sister coming over and my brother-in-law to fix he's fixing the computer. She's coming over just for company. But no, my final thoughts are to kind of bring back the voter suppression topic to the local level. Not to beat the Westminster mayoral race to death that I was involved in, but it's funny that the Democrats, have been absolutely nationwide singing the blues about how the Republicans are trying to suppress voters, especially minorities, and in Westminster we had the opposite, where we had Democrats who were trying to deny voters the right to know what political party the two candidates belong to, because it's a nonpartisan race. But apparently they got confused. Nonpartisan, means that you just don't know the party when you go into the voting booth. Doesn't mean that you got to hide their identity, their political identity, the entire election. And even the newspaper at one point had taken a stance saying that they would not reveal the party affiliation until we kind of were able to chisel away at that. But so the Democrats, they were doing their own form of voter suppression out in Westminster, trying to hide the identity of political parties. So, and that is my final thoughts. Thank you, doctors.
Thank you.
All right. Good to see you, Chris.
Final thoughts, Breacher.
Yeah, I would echo a little bit on the election integrity issue. So I think, one of the concerns that we've been having is that we have a lot of sleepy Republicans in the state, and a lot of times that Republicans have, for whatever reason, they think that the state has always gone blue and it doesn't really matter. And there's this idea.
We had 3 governors elected. That's not so bad.
I know, but there's always this feeling. If you look at the percentage, I know, like in Baltimore City, for example, if you look at the percentage, the number of votes in Baltimore City for the Republican primary, in terms of how many registered Republicans there are, there's 27,000 registered Republicans, and there's 5,800 that voted Republican primary. That means that 81% decided to sit at home, and they don't think that it's worthwhile to vote in the primary. And much different than the Democrats in Baltimore City. That's just one example of the most extreme I've seen. But I think the election integrity issue, for me, it sounds like it's more reason for the Republicans to basically have another excuse to say, not only does our vote not matter, it's not even going to be counted. And so one of the things that we've been working on here in the greatest county on earth is to do an election integrity, to talk a little bit more about election integrity. So we're doing a panel on July 15th, which I think is Tuesday or Thursday, with several delegates and state senators on that issue. And so we're probably expecting a pretty sizable crowd. And so I highly welcome anybody who is listening or on the show. I feel that if you're interested in learning what passed in 2021, what did not pass, and what we should keep an eye out for in 2022, I think it'll be a very interesting exercise. It'll be held at Ellicott City Diner on, I want to say it's a Thursday, July 15th.
Let me verify that.
So I will get you guys the details, and you'll see it.
You are right. It is Thursday, July 15th.
Yeah. So it should be a very interesting conversation. I think we might actually have a guy from Heritage be the moderator. He's a former FEC commissioner, so this will be a very exciting event. So highly encourage everyone to come out to Ellicott City Diner on Thursday, the 15th of July, in the greatest county on earth. So.
Yeah. And final thoughts, Don.
Yeah, something that we had discussed, there was some mention in our other chat on Signal and everything about this, but I expanded upon that, which is just, now it looks like we have multiple successors depending upon the station radio network that's going on there for Rush Limbaugh's slot, much coveted slot. So locally here, we're going to get Dan Bongino, part of the Cumulus network. Buck Sexton and Clay Travis are going to be taking over the majority of the slots. And I see that Dana Lash is going to have some of those slots as well. Breacher was talking about, talk radio and things like that. I don't know what the future of talk radio is post Rush Limbaugh. I mean, Rush was a very unique, attracting millions of people a day to listen to him. I've kind of moved on to podcasts and other things. I don't spend, and because of the pandemic, I don't spend a lot of time in my car anymore. So I don't know where that's going. I don't know if any one of these people will be able to come anywhere close in ratings and listenership that Rush did. They may keep it alive for a while. I'm not sure how well that's going to work. And I don't know enough of, I know Dana Lash personally. I've known her for years. A lot of us know Dan Bongino, but I don't know about the long prospects of doing what they're doing, and attracting enough people. I don't know if talk radio's got enough heft anymore. I think there's so many things. Dwight talked about YouTube and, we do Facebook. There's so many other ways to reach people now versus having to do it via radio per se. So, and then the other thing too was just the Navy now has said that there's no evidence of UFOs. I don't know how Dwight feels about UFOs, so I just thought I'd throw that out there.
As one who used to wake up in the middle of the night to listen to George
Art
Norrie
Bell.
on Coast. Well, no, actually, I didn't listen till the baton was passed. George Norrie and Art Bell just did the weekends.
Art Bell.
But yeah, I did. And here's the thing: is there life out there? Absolutely, there is life out there. But there's also a sign around Pluto that says, "Do not feed the humans or eat the humans." So we're like a no-go zone because there's no, it's kind of like the old phrase, "Beat me up, Scotty." There is no intelligent life, and I mean they come here and they want. I mean, imagine if you're a spacefaring civilization. You come down here and you see Americans voted for his fraudulency, or you see they watch MSNBC and CNN and they actually believe everything as the gospel. You're a spacefaring advanced civilization. These people are too stupid to be part of our community of spacefaring people. They believe everything that they hear on MSNBC. And also, let me do my plug. Today, also this day in history, Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan was released. The best of the Star Treks. Back when you had See you, Dr. Chris. And but anyways, final thoughts, Jeff Thornton.
So we're talking about like personalities. I'll talk about Rush a little bit because I remember, kind of growing up, listening to him on, WMAR at 6:30 a.m. He was just one of the standards of listening when I was, both in high school and come back in college. So I think, as I said, Rush is a unique person. He is truly a personality, and he's able to have intelligent discourse, whether or not you agree with him or not. He has a very, he's a great radio personality, and it's just hard to find people that actually have that kind of presence. So, people that listen to NPR, will recognize certain people that are regular speakers there. I think it's possible to have somebody take Rush's place, but there's really not been anyone that has kind of filled that limelight. Instead, I mean, and again, I don't want to sound too harsh, but on the other side, you have like people like Alex Jones who kind of, go over the top and have their own set of, ideas about how the world runs. So, you don't need to have someone who is necessarily as strong, but somebody who's intelligent, who can actually have a conversation with. And the nice thing about Rush was that, he would talk to you like he's, explaining something, almost like a teacher, but, a kind teacher, like Mr. Bundy or something from high school. Somebody who would actually, you felt like more intelligent after listening to him. So it wasn't just rhetoric. It was more just a discourse that, he was having a conversation about his thoughts about certain things. And, it was very easy to listen to. So, his program went on for 3 hours, but it didn't seem like it at all. Because you'd listen to it and you enjoyed listening to it. I think it's possible to get that, but you need to have that kind of person who's really devoted to setting up that kind of personality and really, building it up. So I don't have that kind of voice or personality to talk for 3 hours and have people stay entertained. But I hats off to him because he's certainly a great guy. So no lack of topics that he would engage in. So nothing was really off the table for this dialogue. So.
And Jeff, you
And
just
I
brought
understand.
something important too, though. I mean, from my point, is that you used entertain. I mean, that's the one thing about Rush was that you have to understand he was an entertainer. I mean, that's how he did it, and that's where when I look at the people that are taking over in the slots in the various stations across the country, I'm not sure those people are really entertainers. I mean, they tend to be kind of activists and things like that. So I think they're going to, the shows are going to be very, very different.
And I mean, nothing against our friend Dan Bongino, but he does come across a little angry. When he's talking. I don't know if you ever, I've listened to him a couple times, this week. He comes across a little angry, opposed to Buck Sexton, who doesn't come across angry. Mark Levin comes across angry, but he's hilarious when he's angry, though. So I think maybe we can replace the Rush slot, the doctors.
So if you're talking about China, I've got endless things to talk about China. I mean, I can talk about China till the cows come home. I can talk about energy policy, computers. Those topics are near and dear to my heart. So those ones I can talk about. But I think
we need to contain China.
A lot of the other guys. I don't stay up on the news. I don't live and breathe a lot of these things. What's kind of close to me is the stuff that I think is, it's in my wheelhouse, stuff that I work with, and also just stuff that I think is important to the nation. Honestly, I think, we're losing footholds to China. And, we talked briefly about IP. This is a huge thing. When we let China take our technology, it used to be just like the Cisco devices, like the routers and switches. China would make their own copies of it. We'd build a supercomputer, China would copy it, make their own supercomputer. That's not such a big deal. I mean, it is, but they're not selling it back to us. What's happening now is that, they're taking all the manufacturing chains. They're designing the circuits, they're building the circuits, they're manufacturing them, they're sourcing them. All we're doing is basically placing orders with China, and China's doing the full order fulfillment. So, we tell them what we want, they provide it. That really should be in our wheelhouse. That should be stuff that we're designing the chips, we're fabricating the chips, we're placing the chips. We should have the ability to do that all domestically. We would not rely upon China for any of those technologies. Sure, we can outsource them if we need to increase our volume, but we had the ability. We built all the Commodore 64, the MOS technology.
The Amiga.
Yeah, the 6502. That was a MOS chip that was built out in Palo Alto, all those the big chip fabs, even before Intel, it was that big. And we built all those chips here, and now we've said, okay, we're going to let other countries do that, and so we have Taiwan and China and other places make chips for us. But as a result, when there's chip shortages, we have no control. It's like our auto manufacturers can't produce cars because they need chips that are produced overseas that we can't have access to, because we can't say, hey, our economy is really suffering now because we can't produce cars, make these chips for us. I mean, everyone's suffering. But if that was a domestic product, then we could ramp up production, we could incentivize it. But we can't just we can't build a fab from ground up in a couple of days and say, okay, now we're at production speed, let's build some chips. It takes years, if not decades, to build these chip fabs out. Anyway,
I agree.
With this stuff for hours.
Yeah, and now for my final thoughts, a couple things. I hope everyone will see us next week and buy a ticket to come see Governor Bob Berlick. There is a VIP reception next Friday at Maryland Live. It's only $85. Some people would say Corinne, Dirk, and Jason may have lost their minds. You get dessert, you get drinks, you get food for $85. That is insanely low price. I mean, what's $85? A couple of trips to Starbucks, maybe half a week's groceries. I mean, that's how, Joe Biden's America. It's
included.
What's that?
I thought food was not included on the ticket.
Food is included. Yes, food is included. You will be fed.
Okay.
It'll be like hors d'oeuvres and stuff like that. And as our tradition, then there's karaoke. And then as tradition, like around 1 o'clock, we'll go out to Denny's or someplace for a late night snack. We've done that last few times we were in that general area. So, and I can't say this enough. Go watch Star Trek 2, everyone, this weekend. This was one of the best Star Trek movies made. It's so far superior to Discovery or any of the other stuff. I wonder if Paramount's going to flag this as a copyright violation.
I will say Ricardo Montalban was great.
Yes, I mean, remember he went from pushing Chryslers to being Khan. And then he had that island show. Yeah.
It's surf cold, and it's very cold in space.
Yes. And but I mean, and next week we will probably have. Next week we will have a recorded show, but it'll be an original show. But we'll just record it earlier in the week because we're the doctors. We're awesome, and we're all going to be in person at the Maryland Republican Party convention next Friday night. If you would like to come by and say hello, we're not Hollywood elitists that don't like our fans. We love our fans. So come on by, say hello. Maybe some of the doctors will do some karaokeing. So hang around for that, and come out and see Governor Ehrlich. I mean, so that's my final thought. And go watch Star Trek 2 this weekend, everyone.
On Monday, it's a very important holiday. Please do not forget. It is my birthday.
Breacher, how do we send gifts to you on Earth 21? Will you breach a little hole so we can throw the gifts down or something like that? So I
will. The sun will shine even brighter in the greatest county on earth. And I think, I share the same birthday with Muammar Gaddafi, Prince, and I'm trying to think of who else. Kind of, there's a few other folks that are like kind of colorful to be born the same day with them. So
I share my birthday with Delegate Neil
June
Perry.
7th.
And so what should you get for your birthday next week? Are you still working from home, or are you back at?
I'm a caged animal here in my apartment. And
I will talk to Jason and a few of the other doctors. I think we could take you out next week for lunch one day.
I'll be around.
Oh, and wish me luck too, because I'm doing the Maryland 10
That's right, you're doing the 10 miler. I forgot all about that.
Yep.
What time is that tomorrow? 7 a.m.?
7:30 a.m.
Wow. I share my birthday with Delegate.
June 7th.
What do you get for your birthday next week? Somebody's watching our show right now. So, I'm on mute. I've muted myself everywhere.
Oh, and which we love to do because I'm doing the Maryland.
That's right. You're doing the 10-miler. I forgot all about that.
Yep.
What time is that? 7 a.m.
7:30 a.m.
That's weird. Are you like listening to yourself? So who's watching us right now? Because I've just shut everything down. Anyways, but goodbye, everyone. We'll see you guys next week in person at Maryland Live. Goodbye, good night, and watch Star Trek 2, everyone.